So the concept in anything is not to push it. So I saw myself on the TEDx stage. Culture at home was definitely very Pakistani, very Islamic. So I followed all the rules and nothing went the way it should have. A series of circumstances brought me to a place where everything went downhill all at once. I don't know if I've ever told you this before because, like you said, we know each other for quite some time now. I studied all the authors in The
Except
Secret except Abraham.
a
I
lot
was
of
like,
people do that.
all things are possible. That's the
But
bottom line.
because you need something to happen that paradoxically, that's what stops it.
Exactly. Law of attraction is precise.
Is there a way to get what I want without having to do the work?
No. Thought viruses enter your system and infect you, and you don't even know that they've entered. If you feel bad, you're not ready for the action that you're contemplating. The market has a shakedown, so the markets tumble. We want people to invest. If they are not ready, I don't tell them to invest. Whoever has more momentum will be the winner. We've been socialized to respect the hard work. We've been socialized to appreciate and celebrate the result of pain and suffering. There's no cookie cutter solution.
No.
Are you ready to release the things that need to be released? If the feeling inside me says, you better check those brakes, then you better check those brakes.
This is Javier with The Real Javier Novoa, and today I'm so proud to have on the great teacher, manifestation coach, author, businesswoman, manifester, Zehra Mahoon. How are you doing today, Zehra?
Excited to be here.
Great to have you. And I've known her for years, probably almost a decade now. And her greatest talent is bringing right brain material to where left brain people can understand it and sort of adapt it. Because, especially in the material of Abraham Hicks, it's such a big body of knowledge that unless you have experience in it, it's sort of difficult to get your foot in the door. Zehra does that because Zehra comes from a background of the world of business. She is or was, I'm not sure if you're still doing it, an investment advisor.
Not
She's
doing it anymore.
not doing it anymore, but she was for many years. She studied philosophy in the United States. She studied business in Pakistan. She's written many books, the most recent of which I believe she wrote part of this book, Live, Love, and Prosper, which was a set of essays by many inspirational authors. And she also wrote the book Unlimited, which is basically a 40-day law of attraction workbook. It's a very excellent way to start practicing this material immediately. Still, my favorite one after all these years is Thrive. It's a great book that explains a lot of difficult to understand concepts of Abraham Hicks. So it's great to have you on, Zehra. And so recently,
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And recently you did a TED Talk, and I understand that this was one of your huge dreams. You fulfilled that over the last few weeks. How did that come about, and what's the talk about?
So the concept in anything is not to push it, to release it, to have a desire and then release it. So I think maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, I saw myself on the TEDx stage and I just released it. And then a series of events happened one after the other that landed me on the TEDx stage. And it was fun and it was easy. And I don't even know how it all happened. It all came together. And that's really an example of how everything should be. The more we get needy, is the word that comes to mind. The more needy we are, the more we slow it down.
So basically, the work is to try to get yourself out of the way and
Yes,
basically allow the steps to come.
the steps are there. We can't see them because we are needy. Neediness will, when we are needy, we are so focused on the need that we can't see anything else. See, it's like when you need your keys and you can't find them, the reason you can't find them is because you need them. You ask someone else to come and look for your keys because they don't need the keys. Therefore, they can find them.
It happens to me all the time. And I always tell people close to me, when you lose something, and it's happened many times, they lost it. Then I said, don't look for it, just relax, and it comes to them.
Exactly.
A
That's
friend
right.
of mine lost their slipper on the beach in the water. And I told her, don't look for it, it'll come back to you. The next day, we went to that spot and found her shoe.
And there it was. Yes.
Incredible the way that works. So,
Exactly.
so Zehra, your life certainly didn't start out this way. You weren't raised with these kind of mores. And you were raised in Pakistan.
For the most part, yes, I was in Pakistan, but not entirely, because my father used to work overseas a lot, and so we traveled a lot. But I was raised in the cultural atmosphere of Pakistan, whether we were in Pakistan or outside of it. Culture at home was definitely very Pakistani, very Islamic, very black and white, right and wrong.
It was later that you sort of got out of that. I think it was due to adverse circumstances in your life,
That's
correct?
right. That's correct. My research started when I said, okay, if I follow the rules, then I should have everything that I want because I'm following the rules. So I followed all the rules and nothing went the way it should have. So the question was like, if the rules don't work, then what is one supposed to do? So I've got to figure this out because obviously something is missing in this recipe. So there's something that I'm not understanding that I need to figure out because my life should not work this way. My life should work really well because I follow all the rules.
Now, did you got married before you settled in Canada, or did you settle in
Yes.
Canada and you followed your husband to Canada?
A series of circumstances brought me to a place where everything went downhill all at once. Finances, relationship, my mother's health, everything collapsed. Sometimes you've got to hit rock bottom in order to let go of attachment. Things get so bad that you just give up on trying to fix them. And that's what you really needed to do way before. Had you done it before, then things would not have got as bad. I didn't know that at that time.
But sometimes that's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
And so, just in a nutshell, of course, we don't want to revisit bad times, but we do want to revisit the bounce back. How did you get into Abraham Hicks before Abraham Hicks? What was your sort of path to
Oh my
study
goodness, you're going
or
to
path?
laugh. I don't know if I've ever told you this before because, like you said, we know each other for quite some time now. So here's the thing. I I was always into personal development literature. I was following people like Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and other people in that space. When The Secret movie came out, I was probably one of the first people who watched it. And Abraham Hicks was part of the first release of The Secret movie. They are not part of the subsequent release. I still have a copy of that first release. And I was really excited about The Secret movie because it answered some of the questions that I had in my thinking. The biggest one was, can we fix things by changing our thoughts? And The Secret movie clearly said, yes, you can change your life if you change your thoughts. Now, there were some, I don't even remember how many teachers in The Secret movie, maybe 10, 12, 15, I don't know how many. Abraham was one of them. But because it was called The Teachings of Abraham, I didn't want to go anywhere near religion. So guess what? I studied all the authors in The
Except
Secret except Abraham.
a
I
lot
was
of
like,
people do that.
I don't want to go anywhere near this material. And really, Abraham was not coming out, like how Esther, when she's channeling Abraham, there's power in
Hmm.
that. I didn't feel any of that power in The Secret movie.
It
So
did.
I
It wasn't a good
bypassed.
platform for her, to be honest.
Well, exactly. So I just bypassed Abraham altogether. Hay House was doing an event in Toronto for The Secret. And all the teachers in The Secret, except Abraham, were at that event. And I attended that event. I have a copy of The Secret with all of their signatures on it. And so they had display tables for all the teachers who were participating and their books. And that's where I picked up a book of Abraham's. And in fact, I didn't even read the book. There was a CD in the book. So the first thing I did was I took the CD out and I popped it in my car, and I laughed and I laughed and I laughed because in that program, Abraham was so funny. They
Oh
were
yeah.
so hilarious. And because it was so much fun listening to the CD, I decided, okay, I'll read the book. This is not this is not what I thought it was, all serious religion, because Abraham comes across really serious in that. In the Secret movie, Abraham comes across with a straight face, very serious, very, flat tone. So I wasn't really
I think
very
she's wearing a
impressed.
suit or
No,
something.
no.
What is it?
No, I don't remember her wearing a suit. I don't remember that, but
Oh,
I remember the tone of voice. It
mhm.
didn't capture my attention. But the CD was a lot of fun. That's how I started my journey.
Then you just soaked up the teachings of Abraham.
Everything. Then I went and got everything. Like everything that Abraham has ever produced, I have got. I have the print book, I have the audio version of the book, I have it all.
But it's,
Then
it's
I
almost
also
like a body of study because
it,
the thing about Abraham Hicks to me, and I've been studying Abraham Hicks now
yes.
for over a decade. You can read her books, but you also have to listen to a lot of her questions. You have to go to events, and eventually you will soak up that knowledge and that sort of you'll get comfortable with the system, but it takes time.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is a lot. And yes, you're absolutely right. Not only did I read all the books, but I joined. They had what they call a master's program. And in the master's program, you get the unedited version of entire workshops that Abraham does. So for many years, I was subscribing to the master's program. The thing that was interesting about listening to all the workshops, and I think I've attended 3 or 4 cruises and I've gone to a whole bunch of workshops, the same question can be answered in so many different ways, depending on who is asking the question. And I think that that really throws people off completely because we expect that if it's this situation, then this is the answer. Like this is the question, this should be the answer, like math. But it's not like math. The answer can be different based on the situation and the person. That's the part that takes time to understand that even though the answers are different, the principles are the same behind the answers. Once you get the principles, then it becomes easy. And if you're not paying attention to what the underlying principles are, you can go for a very long time. I have people in my group coaching program, the Unlimited 365. I have people who have been following Abraham since the 1980s, who didn't understand how to use it the way they do now because they didn't realize that there are certain principles behind the way it works. And you got to understand those principles if you're going to become effective with the application of it.
If you had to sum up some of the basic principles of Abraham Hicks that would help you understand the whole system, what sort of narrative would you give us for that, especially for
So
people who are new?
for sure. And I put them in almost all my books. All my books start with the principles because if you don't know the principles, then it's not going to make as much sense. So there are 16 main principles, and you can summarize all of it under those principles. And the very first one is all things are possible. That's the bottom line. All things are possible. So if something does not look possible, the question to ask is why? Why is this not possible? When you ask that question, an answer will come up because this. Those beliefs that come up, those are beliefs. Those thoughts that come up, they are the beliefs that you have absorbed, that you hold on to. And then the next question is, well, why is this true? And if it's true for me, is it true for everyone? See, that's the thing. We think that if it's true for me, it must be true for everyone. But if you look around, that's not the case. So that means if it's true for me, but it's not true for everyone, then everyone else is behaving in a manner that is different from the way I'm behaving, I've got to figure out what I need to change in my thinking and my behavior so that I can get those results. That's principle number one.
Mhm.
And principle number two is what we were talking about a few minutes ago, and that is attachment to the outcome, neediness, wanting something really badly. When you
Exactly.
want something really badly, that is an indication of lack of trust. And if you go through all religious or spiritual literature from any culture, any part of the world, everyone talks about this principle of trust, but they don't explain it enough for us to really understand what trust is. Trust is the absence of neediness.
Because if you need something to happen, that paradoxically, that's what stops it
Exactly. So
from
when you trust that it will happen, then you don't need it. It will come when it's ready. So you release that neediness and now it will show up. So that's number two. Number three is understanding that law of attraction is precise. It is exact. It is a formula. It works because it's a formula. It works the same way. It is consistent for you, for me, for anyone else. It is consistent, and you can, if you plug in the values in the formula, you can determine what the answer will be based on this information. So if you don't like the answer, then you got to change the variables that are included in the calculation. Once we start understanding how that works, then we know what we have to change.
you just plug it in, you change the variables, and you get the
Yeah,
result.
but you see, it's not that easy because the thing that you need to change is your perspective. And people don't see their own perspective. People are
Mhm.
not able to see their own perspective because it's trying to see something that's on your nose, on the tip of your nose. Anything that's on the tip of your nose, if you're trying, unless you're looking in a mirror, you can't see it, right? So it's too close.
So how do
You have
you
to
avoid that?
back away,
See that. Back away.
back away, back away. This is where coaching comes in handy because when you work with a coach, the coach is not emotionally involved. So there's no attachment, and the coach can see what you can't see. You can see it yourself as well. You just have to adopt a different perspective. It's really easy. How can I see this differently? It's a question.
And that's where contemplation and meditation comes in. And it's like Abraham Hicks says, the your emotion will tell you, like, if you're not feeling an emotion, it's not a big enough player in your subconscious or your conscious. But if you're feeling a negative emotion, you don't know why, that's an indicator.
Then you ask yourself, what do I need to change? You don't have to go backwards to look for the cause. You go forward and say, just ask yourself, what do I need to do? And the
Exactly.
answer will come. Just follow that answer. What we do a lot of times is the answer comes, and then we say, oh, that can't be the answer. Or, no, I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
And so we shoot it down. We don't accept the answer that comes up. So that's your guidance coming up. What's
The
the point of
emotional.
having guidance if you're not going to act on it?
Precisely. But here's the question a lot of people have with the emotional guidance system. It's an amazing tool, but we teach on our channel that there's also a higher level than that. Because, for example, you said your guidance system will tell you to do something, but then you don't want to do that. Well, you're not wanting to do it's also an emotion. So if you have two negative emotions, how do you circumvent that? Do you choose the less bad feeling one? What if you don't know? For example, let's say I want to lose weight, right? And I have a belief system that I need to go jog to lose that weight. I could change the belief, but that's a lot of times that's very difficult. Or I can go jog, but I don't want to go jog either. Where's my emotional guidance system there? That's one of the tricky aspects of this.
Yes, it seems tricky until you understand that the belief that shows up on the surface is not the actual belief. There are beliefs under that belief. So
Absolutely.
it's not just the belief on the surface that you need to change. You need to change all the underlying beliefs that are attached that show up as that belief. So, for example, if I believe that I need to go to the gym, I need to go jog in order to lose weight, but I don't want to do that, then the question is, why don't I want to do that? And when you ask that question, then another belief will come up. Well, it takes up too much time. I don't have that kind of time, right? Or we come up with all those reasons that we give ourselves. Every single reason that we give ourselves is a belief. And we can put all the beliefs down on a piece of paper and say, what is more important, the belief or the goal that I have? Because here's the thing, if the goal is important enough, the beliefs don't matter. Let me tell you a little story about this. I
Sure.
have a friend. I have a friend, uh, well, an acquaintance, more like an acquaintance. She used to be a friend, and then we sort of went different ways, and I didn't see her for many years. I saw her at an event. Now, this person, this lady was overweight by 100 pounds when I used to know her before.
Mhm.
She was big, and she was always unhappy with her weight. She was always trying to lose weight. When I saw her at this event, something like 7, 8 years later, she was skinny.
Wow.
She had lost all that weight. So, of course, when I saw her, I said, "Oh my God, you look amazing. You look fantastic. You did it, like you did it." And she looked at me and she said, "Yes, I did do it, but I wish it hadn't happened the way it did." And I was like, "Why? What do you mean?" She said, "Well, the doctor gave me a diagnosis and said, if you don't lose 100 pounds within this period of time, you're going to be in the hospital." So now what happened? All those negative beliefs went to the side because the goal now was so important that the beliefs didn't get in the way. She was able to do something that she had always wanted to do only because those beliefs were not important anymore. Well, my life depends on this. So now I've got to do it. Who cares about all those negative beliefs that I had before? So that's the thing. You see, beliefs, thoughts have momentum. What is momentum? Momentum is the amount of time we've been thinking about it, that we have been giving it energy. That energy is what we call resistance because it
Sure.
accumulates and it creates a blockage. So the more you have thought about something, you have created this energy field. On that basis, you cannot move forward because it's on your path. But when the goal is so important, you brush all of that aside and you say, "Oh, that's not important anymore, gone."
But oftentimes that's a very, shall we say, big.
Well, we
Uh,
don't want it
hit.
to get
We
that
don't
bad.
want to do that. So, what's the second way to avoid this, Sarah? The second way to get there without having to have such a huge upset?
The second
Because
way to get there is to make the goal important enough. Make the goal important enough, and you will find a way to do it. See, there are so many people. Like I know my father had a friend. They were always together, and this man was a chain smoker. He would put one cigarette out and light another. My mother never liked him because of his smoking habit, and she was always telling my father to get him to quit, but he wouldn't quit. One day he went cold turkey. So my mother asked my father, "What happened? How come your friend has gone cold turkey?" And he said, "Well, his brother just died, and he died of lung cancer. So now he quit." Why? Because suddenly the goal became more important. So we are lazy. We are lazy. We don't want to do the work unless we have to do the work. So make the goal big enough, make it important enough so that you will do the work. Otherwise, you won't do the work because inherently we don't want to do any work.
sure. So then someone will ask, well, Zehra, what's the point of this material if I have to do work? Is there a way to get what I want without having to do the work? That's a
No,
question a lot of people will have.
no, no.
No
And
way at
listen,
all.
but you got to change the way you think. So your beliefs will hold you captive in a prison. You can only operate your life within the confines of your belief system. If you don't like the confines, then you have to change the belief systems. If I live within these four walls and I'm getting claustrophobic, I've got to break down one of the walls in order to get my freedom. So beliefs take our freedom away. And this is why Abraham, one of the things that Abraham teaches is be unconditional. Because when you are unconditional, you don't have beliefs that limit you or limit anyone else. You don't judge yourself, you don't judge other people. You don't judge your past, you don't judge your present, and you don't judge your future. That makes you free.
But that requires what? How do you become unconditional?
It's a decision. You can make whatever decision you want. You made the decision to accept the belief. Now, a lot of times people absorb those beliefs without knowing that they are doing so. But nevertheless, if you don't say no to something with your logical mind, you accept it. In law, we say silence is an admission of guilt,
Absolutely.
right?
Mhm.
The thing is, you've got to say no, and we are not present enough. This is why mindfulness is so important, because when you're mindful, you don't just let everything get into your system. I call it thought viruses. Thought viruses enter your system and infect you, and you don't even know that they've entered. Just like any other virus enters silently. You don't know that you've acquired it. But if you pay attention, then you can keep it from entering your system. So if somebody shares a negative thought with you, you've got to turn it away and say, I'm not buying that. It might be true for you, it doesn't have to be true for me. You're welcome to your beliefs. I'm not having any of that. Turn it away. Give yourself a reason for not making it part of you.
Basically, it's just being mindful. I remember Abraham Hicks said that you could remain in a state of meditation and everything that you want will just easily flow to you.
Well, Hmm. Well, the words that Abraham said are, you are so free that you can choose bondage.
Absolutely.
Those are the words that are relative to the discussion that we just had. In terms of meditation, being present and being in meditation are two very different concepts when it comes to law of attraction, the way Abraham teaches it. So, mindfulness, if you are mindful, you can manifest really quickly anything that you want. Abraham does not recommend meditation for more than 15 minutes a day, because the purpose of life is not to withdraw from life,
Mm-hmm.
but to be in it, experience contrast, and have the ability to manage the contrast. So Abraham does never recommends withdrawal from the world for more than 15 minutes a day. Now, what does withdrawal from the world mean? This is something that I've been teaching people in my community just now, is that um, people feel that mindfulness is the equivalent of meditation, because a lot of people are into yoga, and yoga teaches mindfulness, but they call it meditation. Mindfulness is being focused on something in the present with the help of your five senses.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation is the withdrawal of five senses. That's the difference. When you are in meditation, you are in communion with your inner being, that which we call God. We are in communion. We withdraw ourselves from the world and we go inwards.
Mm-hmm.
When you are mindful, you're not going inwards, you're still externally focused. That's not meditation. That is not the meditation that we want to accomplish based on the teachings of Abraham. Mindfulness helps us to understand when we are going negative or positive. Meditation is not for that purpose. Meditation is communion with your soul.
And it transcends those, even those opposites of negative and positive.
Absolutely, it does, because your soul is always positive, you see. So when you are in communion with your soul, you are relinquishing your five senses. You're not focused on anything that is external to your being. You're not focused, you're not seeing anything. When you truly go into a space of meditation, it is dark.
Exactly.
You don't see anything, you don't hear anything. You only feel like you're in a cocoon of love, that you're held and you are in a beautiful, really safe place. And you slip into that space silently without knowing. The only time you know that you were there is when you're coming out. That's when you feel the light on your eyelids and you know, oh, I want to go back because it was so yummy there. So that meditation is the space between our thoughts. That's where all meditation is. If you're thinking, when you're mindful, you're still thinking.
It's about you see yourself thinking.
When you slip into the space between your thoughts, you're not thinking. There's a tiny space between one thought and another.
Yes.
And everything we do, why do we calm down our thoughts? You know, in meditation, everyone says, slow down your thoughts, calm
Mhm.
yourself down, calm your mind. Well, when we calm our mind, the space between our thoughts becomes bigger, making it easier for us to slip into it. That's why we calm ourselves down. But soon as we slip in here, we withdraw our five senses from the world.
So when you read Neville Goddard and things like this, and basically what I attempt to convey in my channel is that we're bringing what you call meditation, applying it to the game. So, for example, if I'm using the law of attraction, correct, or that might be a wrong-headed term, but if I'm vibrating with what I want, I'm also in the back of my mind knowing that this is really all one. And so, therefore, you can sort of transcend this emotional guidance system because if I feel negative emotion, I know in the back of my mind, well, that doesn't really matter because I know I have it anyway. I know I'm one with it. So that dissolves the negative emotion. You see, it's sort of like a shortcut.
It's basically returning to trust. So Abraham says that there are three steps to manifesting anything. Step one, you ask.
Mm-hmm.
Step two, Abraham says, is not your work. I disagree. I think step two is mainly our work because that's trust. So ask, trust, receive. Okay. So when you talk to yourself that way, as you just demonstrated, you are basically returning to trust. When you
Exactly.
trust, when you trust, step three is automatic. So all our work is to learn how to trust. Now, having said that, I want to say something about Neville. Absolutely love Neville.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I want to share with people is that the message has not changed. However, there's an evolution in the message because human understanding is changing, because science is changing. So, science is the way we prove spirituality. Okay.
Now, they're
Science is
communicating.
the way we prove spirituality.
Sure.
Science does not know what spirituality already knows. Science is trying to figure out spirituality. How does a seed become a tree? Science is trying to figure it out. How is a fetus turning into a man or a woman? Science
Sure.
is trying to figure it out. Spirituality already knows. So there's an evolution based on the shift in human availability of human information about how the universe works. And what Neville's teachings are and what Abraham Hicks's teaching are is the same material. However, Abraham has taken it a step beyond Neville, and I have taken it a step beyond Abraham. And someone will come around in another 10, 20 years who will take it even a step further because now, especially with AI, with quantum physics, everything is changing so quickly.
It is.
Human understanding is changing so quickly that the message, even though it is the same, the way it is presented and explained is always based. There's an evolution of the message based on the understanding of human beings changing. An example is in the past, when people had a very high fever and they were delirious, it was assumed that they were possessed by evil spirits.
Yes.
As human understanding changed, we understood that they're not possessed, they are infected with bacteria. So that's an evolution. That's an example of an evolution that explains something that people thought was spiritual in the realm of the unknown, being
Sure.
possessed, right? And possession by evil spirits was dealt with through religion or through voodoo,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's about closing that gap. And science helps us to close the gap between something that does not have understanding into something that now has understanding. So there's an evolution of the teachings, and they will keep evolving because new ways of explaining it will come about.
If you had to describe it succinctly, what is your piece in this evolution?
My piece, you said your favorite book is Thrive. That is my piece.
Yes, absolutely.
I am
I would
able
have
to
to say
explain
that.
all of law of attraction
Mhm.
using an XY axis and a Y axis, using a chart basically, and everything can be answered based on this formula. I've made it into a
It's a
formula.
literal formula.
It is a
I
literal
love.
formula. If you
Mhm.
know the x-axis and you know the y-axis, plot where you are, plot where you want to go, and then just go there, right? So then I've also taken that and divided it in, and that also is in the book Thrive, into the four-step process. How do you go there? And then in subsequent courses, I have taken that and divided it into 10 questions that you answer that help you to close the gap. So there's an evolution even in my learning and my ability to explain it. And I laugh about it. I've written 19 books and I laugh with people that every time I learn something new, I write a book about it
That
because
is
I'm
your
still
prolific
learning.
author.
I'm still
We
learning.
all are.
Yeah.
So, Zera, an interesting question that comes up, and we have our way of talking about it on our channel too, but is there a difference between feeling and emotion? And I guess I can elaborate on that a little bit. I don't know if you've read this book called The Intuitive Investor by Jason Apollo Voss. It's an incredible book. In fact, tomorrow we're having him on for an interview, the author of the book. But he talks about the fact that in investing, for example, and you can speak to this, a feeling, for example, will tell you not to invest in a company. You don't know why, but your feeling is telling you don't do that. But an emotion of anxiety, he says, may not be telling you not to invest there, but it may be telling you to work on your beliefs, or perhaps you had something in the past that's preventing you from doing something. How
Yeah.
can you tell the difference between these, a feeling and an emotion, whether to stop or whether it means you need to expand?
No, no. The way I understand where you're coming from, and it's different
Mhm.
terminology, but the way I explain it is your guidance system is the way source looks at things. Your logic is the way your mind looks at things based on your experiences and your beliefs. Closing the gap is what I call alignment. But if you have not yet closed the gap, then you should listen to your mind, because if you don't listen to your mind, you will not be able to make progress. So if your mind, what is intuition? Intuition is whatever answer comes up.
Mhm.
That answer that comes up is coming up from a synthesis of what your logical mind knows and what your heart knows, what your inner being knows. So your inner being will never ask you to do something that your mind does not agree with, because if your mind does not agree with it, then you are not in alignment. And if you're not in alignment and you take an action, that action will not bring you the results that you want. And that's where the emotional guidance system comes in. That's where your feelings play up, because if you feel bad, you're not ready for the action that you're contemplating. So there's work to be done, or just go with what you are ready for. In the investment industry, which, as you know, I am very familiar with, spent 33 years doing it, is that a lot of people, when the market has a shakedown, so the markets tumble, we want people to invest at that time. We know that it's good for them, but if they are not ready, I don't tell them to invest
They
because they're
can't
not
bring.
ready. It doesn't matter how much money they can make or the possibility of making money. If somebody is not ready, they're not ready.
It's very interesting in the markets, and I wanted to discuss a little bit of this with you because of your background in investing and how law of attraction ties into investing, because the market really is sort of like an indicator of vibration, isn't it? That you see it there
Absolutely.
very distinctly.
Well, see, if everyone was positive minded, then the market would go away.
Of course.
But there will always be winners and losers. because people are all over the place on the emotional scale. And if you look at it from this point of view, that an average person thinks anywhere between 68 to 70,000 thoughts a day, that means that 70,000 times during a day, you can potentially go up or down the emotional scale because every thought affects your vibration. So even people who are usually positive can end up making a decision from a negative place on the emotional scale. And people who are usually never positive can end up being high enough on the emotional scale for enough time that they can win the lottery.
Yes. You wrote a book about it also, by the way.
I did. And so all of
Mhm.
it can be explained based on, if you understand two concepts, you can explain everything in law of attraction. And those two concepts are the emotional scale, so the emotion and momentum, regardless of where you are on the emotional scale. So this is a very important point because most people don't understand it. Winning has to do with momentum. Winning does not have to do with where you are on the emotional scale. Okay?
I
Winning or
described
losing,
this.
whoever whoever has more momentum will be the winner. This is why perfectly nice people who have never broken anything in their lives will become part of the herd in a riot and go breaking and looting and setting things on fire
And it's
because
happened.
momentum will carry them along. Whoever
Yes.
has momentum will carry the day.
Yes, and a few years ago I talked to you about this. I don't know if you remember, and I said I made a unique discovery, and this was basically I thought about it, and someone who is only worth $500, if he gets to $5,000, he's going to be at the top of the emotional scale. Well, a billionaire, if he goes down to $5 billion, he's going to be at the bottom of the emotional scale. So the emotional scales sort of meet up like this. You can go to the top of one and then you can get to the bottom of another one. So it's
It's
interesting.
very
So
individual.
whoever has the more momentum, if he so an angry person who's really angry can
Yes.
beat a person who's happy.
If he has more momentum. Yes.
So is there something to be said for these people like I don't know if you've seen David Goggins and these people who are into pain, that they utilize that pain and they say, well, let's marshal this pain and this negative emotion to push us on. Is there something to be said for that then? Because
Well,
perhaps having momentum at the bottom of the scale, they're going to get to where they want to be.
no, that's not how it works because negative emotion does not create positive results.
It just creates a
So
result.
it just, yes. So every emotion, every level on the emotional scale will create a result. I can dig a hole with a spoon or I can dig a hole with a shovel.
Mm-hmm.
When you're when you're high on the emotional scale, you have a vibrational shovel. When you're low on the emotional scale, you have a vibrational spoon. But a person with a spoon who is consistent with using the spoon will in the end get there, right? But then because they experience so much pain and so much hardship, then we create a monument to commemorate their hard work. But when someone does it easily because they were high on the emotional scale, they had a vibrational shovel, it was easy for them. We don't celebrate that person. Oh, that was easy. It was
Mm-hmm.
easy for you, so you don't deserve a pat on the back.
Someone wins the lottery, we have no respect.
So we've been socialized to respect the hard work. We've been socialized to appreciate and celebrate the result of pain and suffering, right? Because here's what I will tell you. As a society, pain and suffering is an indication of caring. And caring is a lot, carries a lot of value. So you suffered so much, you must care a lot about this thing. So it's the caring that we celebrate, but we just don't know it. So We call it a celebration of the hard work, but the hard work is the result of that person caring so much that even though they didn't know how to go up the emotional scale, they never gave up because the goal was so important that they kept going. It was the caring that we should celebrate. And caring is caring whether it's low on the emotional scale or high on the emotional scale. You can care a lot.
Exactly. But from what I understand, we were talking about earlier, and what you're saying is you're like you said, you're going to have to do the work regardless. It's just what work, where, at what level are you going to have to work? You can try to
Let,
work it out on the physical, or you can try to work it out
on the mental.
in the
But
mental.
let me give you a few words that I think put it into context. People sign up for goals without signing up for the journey towards the goal. If you sign up for a goal, you should be ready for the journey as well. Now, you can make that journey easy or you can make it hard because there's an easy path or there's a hard path. Which one you take is a decision you make.
Sure.
So you can get to the same goal through many different directions, through many different paths. If your path is bumpy, it's going to take longer. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to need to change many different pairs of shoes, and it's going to hurt,
Mm-hmm.
but you will get there. And the person who takes the easy route, the smooth road, gets there faster. That's the difference in being aligned and not aligned. When you sign up for a goal, sign up for the journey. Now, signing up for the journey, I want to make my journey easy. So, what are the things that I can do to make my journey easy? That involves knowing what is the burden that I am carrying that I can let go because when I'm lighter, I travel faster, right? My
And
path is
letting
both.
go of that burden is basically what you teach and how you coach
That's
people
exactly.
to
Those
do.
are all your negative beliefs. And sometimes it takes a while to look for those negative beliefs. But there
Mm-hmm.
are techniques that myself and other teachers have evolved that you can use in order to figure out what is getting in your way. And therefore, if you know that something's getting in your way, then you can release it. If you don't know it's in your way, I don't know what I don't know, right?
Exactly. So how can you release? You're carrying this albatross. So now, since we're coming to close to the close here, getting a little bit practical, and you've done it. This journey of doing what you love, of not having to go to work for a boss, and so on and so forth. What do you advise people who are, especially a lot of the subscribers on our channel, are into the early retirement movement? How do you advise people to go from a financial state of perhaps debt of zero to getting to where you are? You're actually now living the life you love. You're doing what you love. What advice do you give people to get out of the financial hole or the financial quicksand, so to speak,
Everybody has to do what they are ready for today.
today?
And it's going to be different. There's no cookie cutter solution.
No.
It depends on who you are, what you have going on, and what do you have the capacity to accept about
Mhm.
yourself, about your situation, and what do you have capacity to put in? What do you have the capacity to do? Are you ready to release the things that need to be released? Sometimes people know that they should release something, but they're not ready for it. An example is I will advise sometimes people are in so much debt that I tell them, what if you could just sell your house and get rid of all the debt? And you'll feel so much better that then you'll be able to earn the money, to buy the house again, to buy another
Mhm.
house, and maybe you'll buy a bigger, better house. And they don't want to do that because they come from a perspective of lack and they say, no, Zara, if I sell this house, I will never be able to own another house. So they carry the burden of the debt even though it's crushing them, but they carry it until they can no longer carry it, and then they are forced to do the thing that they could have done much earlier. This is how all foreclosures happen on properties,
Oh, yes.
right? So it's not the same. I wish that it was the same answer, that we could standardize the answer, but the answer is different for every person. And people can only do that which they are emotionally, mentally, and physically ready for. If I give someone advice that they are not ready for and they take the advice, they will not get good results. So as a financial advisor and as a coach, as a mindset coach, you can only give people advice that is appropriate for them based on where they are in that moment, and let them go one step forward, because on every step the advice will change because where you are has changed.
Just in closing here, so I noticed, I think, an evolution, and I'm sure that we've all grown in the last 10 years, 5 years, but in one evolution that I've seen in the way you're teaching things, and perhaps there's, you can explain this to us, is in your teachings, you used to put a lot of emphasis on not looking at the problem, right? Just looking at the positive, focus on the glass half full. I notice you talk more about now releasing negative emotions and releasing baggage. Is that the same concept, or have you sort of evolved toward putting an emphasis on that because you feel the vibration evolving in the manifestation community?
No, that concept has, Javier, it's always been the same. And what I really teach is get off the problem so that you feel better, then come back and work on the problem.
When
You
you feel better.
cannot work on the problem when you are experiencing the problem. And since very early days, maybe it's even in the book Thrive, I give the example of a car on the highway going out of control because the brakes are not working. That's not the time when you fix the brakes. That's the time when you bring the car to a stop, then you fix the brakes. So you get off the problem in order to stop the car. You don't think about, oh, my brakes are out. You think about, I need to get this car to stop, right? So you get off
Mhm,
the problem, you bring the car to a stop, then you get someone to fix the brakes for you.
mhm.
Or or you fix the brakes before you start the journey.
That would be the smartest way to do it.
Exactly. So if I have, if the feeling inside me says, you better check those brakes, then you better check those brakes. You
Mhm.
see? So this is what it means. Get off the problem. When you feel better, go up the emotional scale a little bit, come back and now work on the problem. You cannot work on a problem if you're in the middle of it.
And that's
Yeah,
where meditation comes in also. Correct? You pause and then you can
you
get back
pause.
on another vibrational state.
Exactly, exactly. So I have forever, and because this is how I changed my life. This is exactly what I did. I got off the problem, then came back and addressed the problem, then got off the problem, and then came back. So I have always taught it this way.
Absolutely. And you take very small steps that you can. No,
Exactly.
well, big enough that they make an impact, but small enough that they're not outside of your emotional scale.
Well, it depends, because sometimes things happen where you can drop a negative belief right away, because you
Mhm,
suddenly see it doesn't, you weren't able to see it before. Now you see it with clarity, it's gone.
mhm.
It's that easy.
So, can I not make that thing, or someone who has a negative thought or emotion that they're trying to work on? Can you not just simply focus on the fact that, like we said again, like non-duality, and say, "Well, I am everything anyway," and then that problem will just go away on its own? Like you said, sometimes it goes away in an instant, or do you
Well,
have to go back and work on it?
no, okay, so this is a very big question. You have another hour?
I mean, if you have a few more minutes, I don't mind.
Here's the thing.
Sure.
If you don't really believe it, if there's a little voice inside you that says, sure,
Hmm.
if you are not used to being high on the emotional scale, so the pen signifies the emotional scale. If you are not used to living your life mostly high on the emotional scale, you will not be able to sustain that feeling of trust. And so you go up, you disregard in that moment where you are disregarding your belief system and saying, no, I'm willing to trust. Then you trust. And then let me give you an analogy. If you were walking a tightrope between two very high buildings, okay, and you say, ah, I know this is dangerous, but I trust. And
Sure.
then you you pull yourself up and you get into that mode of trusting and you take a few steps and then you look down, the trust goes out the window and so do you.
Exactly.
But if you have practiced trusting, meaning you are someone who is used to spending most of your time high on the emotional scale, and you say, I have always trusted, and I have that happen in my life when I trusted, and that happened in my life when I trusted, that happened. Now you're sure. Now you're going to step on that tightrope and you're going to run across to the other building. You won't even look down. And that's
It's
the
all
difference.
where you
That's the
practice
difference.
yourself.
That's the difference. Trust has to be practiced if you're not used to it.
Exactly. Well, Zehra Mahoon, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great interview. It's going to be interesting for a lot of people,
Thank
and
you for having me.
look forward
Appreciate
to
it.
talking to you again.